I don't really feel qualified to speak about some of the issues that I'm going to talk about tonight. But I know that I feel very qualified in talking about some of the history and some of the factors that are playing in to what's about to happen next. Two gentlemen that are not with us any longer. Two gentlemen that should have been alive much, much longer. Ahmaud Arbery, a few weeks back. And then we've got George Floyd, who was trying to turn his life around. He had really, really done a lot of things trying to make right with his life, and recent videos have shown where he's come out and, he had been talking about trying to get guns off the streets, and, he had no idea he was about to die. He had no idea this was going down, and, it's two people out of millions and millions, if not billions of people on this planet that won't be with us any longer. And they represent a microcosm of many, many, many other thousands of people, millions over the course of time, who have died from jackbooted, hyper alpha, ridiculously violent, absolutely lacking in any form of compassion, authority figures, whether they've been political, whether they've been military, or whether they've been police. And this is just but the tip of the iceberg. This isn't what brought everyone out to the streets. Yeah, you had two insanely brutal killings that happened right there in front of our eyes on camera. So it's like you can't deny it. It happened. It's right there. But now you've got this situation where everyone's taken to the streets. And of course, in every action that's ever happened, there have been agitators, instigators, infiltrators that have created havoc and violence. At the DNC, we saw those infiltrators and instigators. At the Occupy inauguration, we saw them literally trashing stuff. They come in and they give everyone a black eye, and there's tear gas everywhere, and there's flashbangs. I remember running through the streets of D.C. as rolling waves of tear gas came through and flashbang grenades and crowds running top speed through the streets. I mean, bricks flying, rocks flying, bottles flying, people bleeding. It was frightening. Well, what's going on right now is a continuation of this. And if you look back to Occupy Wall Street was the beginning phases of this. But you've got to go back, and you've got to go back to the colonization of this country. And you've got to go back to the slavery that occurred. And you've got to realize that people starting in this nation started out as less than human. They were not even considered fully human. They were treated as property. Some people would say that happened a long time ago. But as someone who's never been treated as property, I can only tell you what it's like to know that every single day I am owned, if you will, by a need to pay bills, by a need to go to work regardless. There is no, I'd like to take 6 months off and whatever. No. You do everything you can because they've got you so tight. You do everything you can to stay employed. It doesn't matter how many shit sandwiches you've got to eat. You do what you can to stay employed because the jobs have been intentionally kept scarce. The upward mobility completely shut down. The raises and the cost of living increases completely shut down. In fact, they're continuing to cut services and cut costs and cut benefits. What does all this have to do with the riots that are going on right now? With the protests? Depends on which angle you're coming from, right? I can tell you right now, they've given just enough people, just enough, a little bit extra, just a little teeny bit of private property to make them feel like they would be willing to lay down their lives to keep that little teeny bit of private property. And it doesn't matter who they hurt. It doesn't matter who gets hurt. So the idea here of seeing these people protesting as rioters, and the idea of being able to somehow or another manage to turn the oppressed into the bad guy is not an accident. This is how they always do it. Do you remember how they treated the folks at Occupy? Do you remember how the pigs squirted down with fire hoses civil rights marchers who were peacefully marching? Do you remember how they would sick the dogs on them? This is not new. It's just new to us. But it's not new. And this country has been breeding hate and breeding all kinds of inequality and breeding violence and breeding hatred amongst the little people with two separate yet similar narratives. Poor white people have been led to believe that black people are somehow or another taking their lunch, that minorities are taking their lunch, that immigrants are taking their lunch. And in their minds, they have been weaponized as part of that ownership class's attack dogs. They're the Doberman Pinscher that roams the fence line at the mansion. They don't know why they're doing it. They just know that that's what they're supposed to do. Meanwhile, you see people trying to do whatever they can to get over, to get by, to survive. Because you can't do it the quote-unquote legitimate way because they've cut wages so much they have eliminated the freedom that was once there. I mean, think about it. People got off at a reasonable time. They came home. Not everybody. But enough that people remember the good old days where dad got off work and put on a pair of shorts and went out there and coached the ball team. You know, that's the Make America Great Again thing that you hear from Donald Trump. And there are enough people, not everybody, clearly not everybody, but there was enough people that remember that time. And it seemingly ties together with the civil rights, and it seemingly ties together with women's lib, and it seemingly comes together with all these other things that they can point at and say, that's when my life got fucked up. And it's not an accident. See, economics is the subject I always want to talk about because it is the ultimate. It is the ultimate distributor of real resources, whether that be homes, whether that be vehicles, whether that be medicine, whether that be safety. Money talks, bullshit walks. And that's what this nation has turned into, a dog-eat-dog world. I shouldn't say it's turned into that. It's always been that. It's just that the creepers, capitalism, has demanded a sacrifice. And every time it burns out a certain segment, it needs more. And so they eliminate more space and it takes more and takes more until there's nothing left but a few people that pull all the strings. Now all of a sudden, middle-class white America is starting to feel this pinch too. And so out in the streets, people are saying we've had enough of this. It's not just George Floyd, although that is the catalyst. You know, that's the catalyst. You know, and it's not just Ahmaud Arbery, who we watched gunned down jogging, although that's a big part of it. It's that people have had enough. And somebody very astutely mentioned to me earlier, you know, they always talk about bread and circuses keeping the masses quelled and out of the streets. Little did they know that this COVID-19 pandemic was going to run roughshod over the bread and circuses without football going on, without baseball going on, barely having even MMA and NASCAR and all the other stuff that keeps people quiet, sitting there on their couches, content watching something. No, they got rid of bread and circuses and people saw the world for what it was. They didn't mean to. I don't think they meant to let it happen. Or maybe they did. Maybe they wanted this to happen. I don't know. But you've got to imagine that millions of people trapped in their homes for months with nothing to do have to be going stir crazy. Add in the real despair of millions of people losing their jobs. Then add in the fact that the police killed one unarmed man, and a bunch of teabagging rednecks killed another. You know, after a while, you start to wonder who the puppet master is, who's pulling these strings. People worried about riots, destroying private property and blowing up their neighborhoods and so forth. You got one store owner running around with a machete trying to chase people off, and he got himself knocked out. I don't support violence in general, but don't be surprised when violence happens. People have had enough. And if they're crazy, we don't have health care in this country. And if they're broke, we don't have jobs in this country. And if people have had enough, they tried to vote, but they stole the damn nomination away from Bernie Sanders. Democrats, eat your peas. Look at that. You played a part in the absolute desperation. And then you got Donald Trump sitting there, fanning the flames, pushing his Doberman pinschers behind the fence to look at those thugs. Never mind the really good people who were up in the State House in Michigan with their guns and their military jackets showing off, Never mind that. Ultimately, almost every bit of this goes back to 40 acres and a mule. We didn't take care of reparations. We didn't take care of business. We didn't follow through on our promises, just like we did to the Indians. We kept offering them peace, we kept offering them land, and then we kept taking it back and lying and killing more and more and more. I mean, genocide in this country is nothing but a children's story anymore. We're so used to it, we don't even blink. Well, except now we are. Now, it's so good to see white people getting it. Finally. It's always been a white problem. Black people have been saying this stuff forever, and they've gotten used to it. And they've been they have their own jokes. They have their own things they tell each other. Why is that? Because they know ultimately that they have to code switch. They can't just sit there and tell white people, because look at how many idiots are out there Thought, well, you're burning up your own city. Nobody ever talks about black on black crime. This is not about idiots. Black on black, white on white. These are things that happen and have happened since Cain and Abel. We're talking about systemic, repeated, baked into the system violence, inequality, hate. And they're fighting back. And allies, white allies, are supporting them. While the president goes out there and puts a flag in the air, basically, and says, Sig Heil, he's going to make Antifa, which is an idea, it's not an organization, he's going to make Antifa a terrorist organization. Never mind the Proud Boys. Never mind the 3%ers. Never mind any of these other groups. No, he's targeting the people that are Antifa, anti-fascist. And by extension, has basically copped to being a fascist. The socioeconomic breakdown in this country has been a neoliberal coup d'etat over our entire democracy. A corporatist dream giving over power to corporations and the elite 1% who lead a life none of us will ever understand or get to participate in. Not that we necessarily want to. But the rest of us are left pointing at each other, pitting against each other. And so poor white Americans that are uneducated, some are educated, but they've been propagandized, are going to see this and they're going to rally for Trump because they don't know any better. It's a shame. Maybe they do know better. But I don't know of any way a person could know better and not do better. So I have to assume they don't know any better. And what you've got once again, just like we got a Great Depression coming our way right now. So without any of this stuff going on, the pain of austerity and the pain of joblessness and the pain of a lack of understanding. We just gave $5 trillion to Wall Street while simultaneously giving you and I $1,200 checks that many of us, myself included, did not receive a nickel of, either because of arrears or some other thing that kept them away from receiving a check, or a bank or a debtor took that check and paid their bill with it. So people didn't get any kind of help. None. But once again, the wealthy did. And again, the same people that are patrolling that fence line like little Dobermans for the elite are the same idiots that don't realize they're being duped either. They think it's your fault. They think it's someone else. But they don't point up. They point down. They point sideways because they want to be one step above the pig slop. They want to feel important. They want to feel empowered. They don't want to feel like that lowly field worker that Pappy used to own. They are afraid of being equal. Equal scares them. Terrifies them. So they're going to fight back because they don't want to look in that mirror and realize that we're all in this pig slop that the elite have paid for us. And the elite are more than happy to let us eat our own. Why is that? Because the population control freaks out there would rather see us kill each other and knock us off, rather have us die of a virus to knock us off, rather give us a vaccine that they've tainted or give us something else to keep population. They want to make us bear the weight of the ills of the earth, not the largesse of the rich. But they want to make the poor minorities who have no generational wealth, who have no fat to trim, they want to make them pay more. They want to make the guys that are one step above that be able to attack the little guys again and keep all the focus away from the puppet masters. This is why economics is so bloody important. They've convinced you to think that anytime we take care of an African American or something, it's taking money out of somebody else's pocket. They've convinced you that anytime we spend money on the people, it's socialism. They convinced you that everything is taken from somebody else and given to somebody else. So naturally, they protect theirs. And what you see now, while buildings are burning and people are flying out into the streets and fights are erupting and cops are acting insane, running into people with cars and stuff and beating people senseless, including shooting rubber bullets at journalists. I mean, it's surreal. It's like this is like the world Arthur Fleck lived in the movie Joker. I still marvel at how few of us realized how razor thin the veneer was that was protecting our vision from seeing that we were actually living that Joker world. And for many people, privilege has allowed them to not see that. But many of us have gaping holes in our teeth. Many of us are in extreme, excruciating pain, afraid to go to the doctor for fear of being bankrupt. And so the seeds of unrest are there that go far beyond any of the police brutality or the redneck shooting sprees or any of the other things that are going on right now. With millions of people laid off, and things only looking worse, with the Republicans such as Mitch McConnell pushing for states to go bankrupt so that they can literally put them in receivership and bleed the freak, steal everything as they gut it in a bankruptcy. We're only at the beginning, folks. We're only at the beginning. And I can tell you right now, I know what side I'm on. I'm on the side of we the people. And I don't see it as riots at all. I see it as protests against extreme injustice, socioeconomic injustice, healthcare injustice, housing injustice, banking injustice. My God, they've got loan sharking with 650%. I mean, unbelievable amounts of criminal activity. And once again, the criminal enterprise that brought you Countrywide and the mortgage crisis and the mortgage-backed securities, those same parasites are looking to capitalize once again on our own destruction. So I am definitely on the side of the people. But it requires us to understand the game that is being played against us. It's not good enough just to be angry. Anger will get us out in the streets. We need to know how the system works so we can get our lives to where they are safe, where we can lead lives, raise families, and not live in fear of leaving our own front door. For those of us who are lucky enough to have a door. and to not be petrified of losing our jobs because we have a federal job guarantee waiting. Folks, I want to see our media tell the truth. I want to see our politicians tell the truth. I am so sick and tired of establishment orthodox academics, scholars, focusing more on tone, focusing more on law and order and justice than protecting and ending the injustice. Instead of seeing them outraged, we see them try to minimize and talk about how bad certain people are. It's time for us to make it so that tone policing, the hiding of the real struggle, is the real thing that is to be attacked. Those that silence angry voices, they need to be silenced. Those that talk about tone and etiquette, they need to be silenced. It's not just because people want to say whatever they want to say. It's because they've been muzzled for so long that if you don't allow them to speak their pain, no matter how crass, no matter how challenging it is while your pinky's out and you're drinking your tea, you need to understand the real world and the real revolution that is brewing right below the surface and is no longer buried. It's now in plain sight. And there's nothing that's going to put it away until justice is had. There will be no peace without justice. And it's up to us as allies and those who are fighting back to build broad-based intersectional coalitions, focusing on corruption, focusing on the real enemies, making people that have been oppressed and ripped off whole through reparations, and by rolling out public purpose spending for every working person, supporting unions and supporting labor and supporting families once again, instead of just blatantly supporting corporations and telling families to go fuck themselves. I hope that you all understand how important this is. Because if you don't, it's going to end up surprising you in a way you didn't expect. You could be the one hurt. Because as of right now, people have had enough, and they're not going to take any more. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. I hope that what I said resonates with you. I hope that we find a way together as the 99% to make right all these tremendous wrongs. Have a good night.